I've designed a life tracker that I think is going to change my life. Every single day for the next 6 months, I'm going to track my habits, my emotions, my hobbies, and my fulfillment. I didn't just randomly wake up one day and decide to start tracking my life. Actually, I kind of did. But anyways, it kind of got spurred on by some of my journaling sessions where I just felt like my days were sort of blurring into one and they were starting to lose a bit of meaning. I decided to go deeper and reflect on what it is that was missing in my life. And I've come to realize now that it's fulfillment. So I started a new life experiment, how to feel fulfilled. Fulfillment isn't something that happens to you, it's something that you practice. I actually don't know what it is that adds fulfillment to my life. It differs so much from person to person that there's literally no step-by-step guide on how to feel more fulfilled every day. So I think I just have to get to know myself a bit better. If I collect all this data about what it is that I'm doing every single day and how I'm feeling, from that I can draw a conclusion on some of the things that make me feel more fulfilled and some of the things that make me feel less fulfilled. I actually made 2 more videos on this fulfillment experiment series. I would highly recommend watching those first 2 videos before watching this one, because this video is going to make a lot more sense if you have that context. But yeah, let's just get straight into the tracker, because that's obviously why you've clicked into this video. It's actually all here in this little red notebook. This is it. Ta-da! This thing is going to change my life, I think. So this is actually a snapshot of my August 2025 so far. I figured I'd wait to fill out some of the data before I showed it to you so you can see what the end result actually looks like. And it looks a little more complex than it really is. I know there's a lot of apps and tools out there that help you track your emotions and track your habits. I very intentionally kept this tracker to be fully analog, pen and paper. Because it's tactile, it makes it feel more thoughtful and very much me. I kind of am embracing the messiness of it. I think that is a good reflection of my month and my life. That's why it's in this little book and not in my Notion. I actually got the idea of using an A5 grid notebook from this creator called Dominic Hart. I saw his video on TikTok, but I think he also has a YouTube channel, which I'll link both of those down below. He's amazing and you should definitely go check out his content. He truly inspired the layout of my tracker as well as the medium that I chose. I love that for him it became a very important daily ritual. I adored the way that it's presented, how compact it is, and for something as fatiguing and monotonous as filling out what you did every single day, he made it look so easy and not overwhelming at all. So I'm very much inspired by you, Dominic, and maybe one day you might change my life. So I had his concept of a tracker in the back of my mind as I started creating my own version. I thought I'd share the process on how I got to that final version of the tracker. To begin with, I brain dumped all the things I wanted to track about myself, all the things that I thought would be an influence on my fulfillment. That was things like my habits, my hobbies, my emotional state, as well as how fulfilled I felt. And then off the back of that, I started creating a list of questions and things that I wanted to learn, which became the basis for the hypotheses in my experiment. After that, I started creating some drafts of what the tracker would look like, just to see if it would actually fit in the A5 format that I wanted to create. In the process of creating all those drafts, I realized that I needed consistency in my data. And if I didn't figure this out sooner, I would end up with very messy data and my results would be all over the shop. So I landed on using symbols, a tagging system, as well as color coding. And then when it came to the emotional state, I realized I need to pick an emotion off a set list of options. Emotional wheels are used quite a lot in psychology, but they weren't quite working for me. So I wanted to create my own version of the emotional wheel. And this is actually where Kittl came into clutch. They have very kindly sponsored today's video. I've been using Kittl for a little while now for my design projects as well as for my YouTube videos. Kind of picky when it comes to my design tools, but I've genuinely really loved using Kittl. I think it's beautifully designed, it's super intuitive, and it's chock full of some awesome features. The fulfillment checklist, the values exercise, and the emotion list are all resources that I've used as part of this experiment, and you've also seen in some of my videos. They were all made using Kittl. Their brand kits are also flippin' fantastic. It's the main way that I stay really consistent with my branding across all of my graphics as well as my YouTube channel and pretty much everything that I create these days. It keeps everything cohesive, all my fonts, logos, colors. Basically, it's become my go-to design tool. If you want to sign up for free, you can use the link in my description below, and you can also use my code ZENIAYT if you want 25% off any of the paid plans. I hope you all get to try it out for yourself, and thank you Kittl for sponsoring today's video. So let's get back to the tracker. It's divided into two different pages. So the left hand side is all the things that I did that day, and the right hand side is all the things that I felt that day. On the very far left side and the y-axis is actually the days of every single month. You can see 1 to 31st August, and the x-axis are all the other data points that I'm capturing. In the what I did that day page, we've got all the habits in black and then all the activities and hobbies in blue. In terms of activities and hobbies, these are things that I kind of wanted to keep flexible each and every month, just so I can kind of see what moves the needle more. August is a little bit sparse just because it was a very busy month. And then the right hand side is all the things that I felt that day. So first we've got the time of the day, which just gives us a bit of context. And then we've got energy levels, which are symbolized with these arrows: up for high energy, down for low energy, and middle for a bit of average energy. And then we've got my emotional state. So that's where that emotion list comes in. I have grouped all my emotions into pleasant, neutral, and unpleasant. I basically refer back to this list every single day to kind of pick the core emotion that I'm feeling at that time. And I've also color coded it just so it's easier to scan when I get to analysis. And then we get to fulfillment, which has been notoriously hard to figure out how I could track this. I did this values exercise in a therapy session, which helped me uncover my core values. And fulfillment is actually intrinsically linked with your core values, as well as a measure of how aligned you were to showing up as those values each and every day. So I created my own definition of fulfillment off the back of those core values. Using that definition, I ended up creating a set of 5 yes and no questions. The questions were: would I want more days like this? Did I feel a sense of peace even if the day wasn't perfect? Did I feel connected to myself, others, or my purpose? Did I allow myself to play or get inspired? And did I feel like myself today? Based on the way I answer those questions, I give myself a score from 0 to 5, and that ends up being my fulfillment score for that day. On the very far right is actually probably the most interesting part of the tracker. It's a line graph of my fulfillment scores across the month, which is a super cool way to visualize how fulfilled I was every single day. That alone is so powerful and will play a pretty big part when I get to analyzing my results for the month. That's all the raw data that I'm capturing using my tracker, but it's actually not the full picture. When I eventually sit down to synthesize all of this data, I will also start to layer in other pieces of information. One of the biggest ones being my calendar, which I keep pretty up to date. It will show me exactly how busy I was that day, any particular events that were going on, any travel that I had, and alongside that will be my journal entries, which will give me more of a qualitative and emotional perspective of as many days that I journaled. I also think it'll be really cool to layer in things like the moon phases, menstrual cycles, and just see are any of those things a contributing factor to feeling less fulfillment or more fulfillment. And if I wanted to go really crazy, I could also layer in things like weather and sunrise, sunset times, just to see if the weather and the sun kind of play a role in emotions, mood, and fulfillment as well. I just wanted to flag that I'm not taking all this data and numbers at face value. I'm really keen to understand the why behind all the trends. So yeah, hopefully it will be super interesting and fun. So now that you've actually seen the tracker, I thought I'd list out all of the hypotheses that I have for this experiment. So all the things that I actually want to test are true. I can feel fulfilled even on hard days or days where I'm processing unpleasant emotions, and vice versa. Pleasant emotions or having high energy does not actually guarantee that my fulfillment score will be high that day as well. Things like socializing and journaling, I think, will have a huge impact on my fulfillment score. Connecting deeply with myself and others is a pretty important part of my life and my values. So I think that will contribute to a boost in my score for the days that I do those things. Not something that I'm measuring in August, but definitely something I want to think about is acts of kindness and giving back will also contribute to a higher fulfillment score. In the same vein, being creative and crafty crafty also leads to higher fulfillment. Another hypothesis that I have is that giving attention and awareness to my emotions and just simply naming an emotion every single day leads to a better understanding of myself and how I'm feeling, and therefore I will have a higher fulfillment score as a result. The way that I would measure that is an average score at the beginning of the experiment compared to an average score at the end of the experiment, and ideally that average would have increased simply by just doing this experiment. Certain habits and doing them consistently will raise my fulfillment score as well. And lastly, being hyper productive and trying to tick all of the boxes will lead to a lower fulfillment score. There are a lot of assumptions that are being made. I know that I'm making a couple here which I wanted to flag. The biggest one being that fulfillment can even be measured or tracked at all, and also that fulfillment can be reverse engineered. In other words, that the results that I get can be used to cultivate fulfillment over time and shape my definition of fulfillment entirely. I'm currently only tracking my healthy habits, which is kind of me making the assumption that it's enough to uncover any patterns and themes around fulfillment in my life. And I'm also assuming that by not capturing unhealthy habits, I will then identify gaps in the experiment and more questions that I want to answer with future experiments. And lastly, I'm assuming that my journals will be a catch-all and kind of cover most of the qualitative side of an experiment. The journal entries will give me a more in-depth view of how I was actually feeling that day and maybe what I got up to that day, but that's also assuming that I will journal every single day. So any experiment, there's always a level of bias involved, and the best thing I can do is be aware of them and find ways to overcome as many of them as I can. Some obvious ones that I'm aware of and watching out for: recency bias, which is kind of placing overemphasis on the more recent data as opposed to the ones that are from the past, and using that in order to determine future events. But I think by journaling, it will help me reflect and recap on most days. The other one is confirmation bias. I am aware that I'm running this experiment on myself, so that would mean that I might subconsciously skew some of my results to prove my hunches true. But the way I would caveat that is by using code tools or AI as part of my synthesis and analysis process. It will give me more of an objective analysis, and then I can apply my human perspective over the top of that. But as you can see with my August results so far, I am pretty honest when I fill out the tracker, and the data is quite accurate to how I feel and what I did that day. The other thing is the halo effect, which is that one good thing could happen, which means it kind of carries the results of that day. I think this is okay. Even if one big thing and one great thing kind of happens that carries the whole day's worth of fulfillment, I think that's still true to my experience. Also, naturally, with the sheer quantity of data that I'm capturing, because it's every single day for at least 5 to 6 months, I think it will be less prominent. I'm also aware that I'm only capturing one emotion per day, and the time of the day can kind of influence those results, which means that I might feel an emotion at that point in the day, but not necessarily throughout the day, and there might be many emotions at play. I think the journaling will give a lot more nuance to this, but if it's really becoming an issue, I'm thinking I can kind of adjust the tracker within 2-ish months of the experiment. But I'm also kind of mindful when I'm filling out the emotion that it truly is the dominant one at play in my mind at the time, and I think that that's still a pretty accurate picture. So even if the results aren't quite perfect, I think it's still more than not capturing it at all. I think also the idea of presenting and sharing my data online might kind of sway me into entering it differently, but I've given myself the permission that I can keep some of the data private, but I can still share all the learnings and the themes that I've come across and not necessarily share every single day's worth of results. And lastly, there is the idea of overtracking and the fatigue that comes with that. What that means is too much data capture might result in a loss of meaning over time, which is precisely the reason why I'm only tracking the things that I'm tracking right now and keeping it quite light. I always thought that I would adjust the activities and hobbies section every other month, so that should keep things kind of fresh and exciting. This is a pretty variable and complex experiment, which means I'm gonna stop myself from drawing any conclusions until I have enough data, so probably not until 2 months in, but I will be taking field notes for every single month so that I don't kind of miss anything that seemed quite big big at the time. And yeah, I mean, that's my tracker, guys. It's a lot of effort, but I think this could really be game changing for me. Quickly realizing how much of a nerd I actually am, that I am enjoying this so much. Over the next few weeks, I'll continue collecting some data, and I'll also start doing some analysis on the side. The next episode in this series, I'll do a full review of August and September so far, what patterns emerged, anything that surprised me, what I'm changing, and just how the experiment is going. We're only just getting started. Thank you for watching this video. If you're doing your own version of this experiment or are on your own fulfillment journey, please drop a comment and share your experience and learnings so far. I'd love to hear what you're up to. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.